Of course, we are going to talk about the news of the week, the RØDECaster Pro II audio production console, which is pretty much doing the same to the audio production world than what Tesla did to the automotive industry. In the old days, you bought a car which had extras and certain features, and if you wanted more extras and better features, well, you had to buy a new car. Tesla had completely changed this around by introducing the idea of firmware updates to their cars, which didn't simply correct things that were not working well, but delivered actual, real useful stuff like range extension, more power and the like, until the point that you have felt you are sitting in the same car, but meanwhile, it is a completely new car. And this is, or better, this used to be very much the case with audio equipment. If you had a mixer that had no compressor built in and you wanted it to have compressor, you had to buy a new mixer. And just like Tesla did it with their cars, this is what Rode had completely changed around with the new RØDECaster Pro II. Welcome to Record to Report. This is episode 4 with the new RØDECaster Pro II in focus. I will walk you through what was taken away from the original version, what was kept and upgraded, and finally what features were added. There were a lot that make it stand out, and those that will make it stand out for years to come, which is why I'm saying it is the Tesla of the audio world. What they have crafted is honestly beyond imagination. For those of you who don't know, the original RØDECaster Pro was a podcast recording console. Rode has introduced it in late 2018, and it plain and simply revolutionized the podcast recording market. Until then, you had to mess with wires and adapters and software and multiple devices for a simple task of recording a phone call, where the person on the phone was not driven crazy by hearing their own voice echoed back. This is the much feared mix-minus setup, where you send back to the phone everything that you're recording minus their own voice. This used to be a remarkably hard task to achieve, at least compared to how easy it became with the RØDECaster Pro. It also allowed for a USB loopback and the same mix-minus setup on the Bluetooth connection. Also, it hosted 4 microphone inputs, and you had onboard DSP, digital signal processing, so voice effects like compressor, de-esser, bass boost, and clarity enhancer on board. And it was a recorder that could record internally on an SD card, but also through USB. Numerous firmware updates kept it fresh in the past 3 years, which added features for which not very long ago you had to sell your old device and buy a new one. Remember the Tesla analogy? With these updates, you could have the feeling you have a totally new device with a huge jump in the feature set. USB mix-minus, multi-track recording, color-coded mic channels, 64 instead of 8 sound pads with the introduction of 8 new sound banks, feedback prevention when moving mic faders, talkback, granular voice processing control, master bus compressor, even MIDI control. Astonishing! The last update was about a year ago, which is not very typical for Rode. Also, they didn't really react to the competition, catching up with the Zoom LiveTrack L8 first, and the Zoom PodTrack P4 and P8, and the Tascam Model 12, and more recently the Tascam Mixcast 4, which even outclassed the RØDECaster Pro in certain features. In 13 features, to be exact. You can check out my review about it. Now we know why Rode didn't bother to react. They've been busy working on the sequel to the RØDECaster Pro, and they knew that it will be such a quantum leap versus every other audio recording console in this price class that they could just keep cool. Well, sequel. It is not really just a sequel, because they didn't repurpose a single screw from the original RØDECaster Pro. Well, maybe some screws they did repurpose. But this is something entirely new, redesigned and re-engineered from the bottom to top, and most of all, inside. So what they took away, don't worry, first of all, it's a short list, and they have added so much more that you won't miss those. So there will be no headphone port on the front, so you'd lose the convenience of having a headphone port pointing towards you. Also, there will be no TRRS smartphone input. Remember, you won't miss it. Bear with me. They also removed 2 out of the 8 physical faders on the unit and left only 6. They also removed the numbering from the channels because, well, we'll get to that in a minute. They took away from the width of the unit. This is how it stacks up. On the old unit, you had a width of 350 millimeters and a depth of 275 millimeters, while the height was 82 millimeters. And when it comes to the new one, it's about the same depth and about the same height, but it's actually a lot less wide. And it's actually a little bit shallower as well at 60 millimeters, but This time, the screen is tilted, which adds to the hate a bit. But it is way more ergonomic in exchange. It weighs about the same as the old unit, so it's a lot more dense, but it is 20+% lighter than the Tascam Mixcast 4, in case you were wondering. A quick look at what they kept, although updated. The 4 mic inputs, this time they are combo jacks, so you can happily input a guitar, a keyboard, and any outboard gear. The 4 headphone ports, we'll talk about them in a minute. USB input, loopback, and USB mix minus, but now you will have 2 of them. USB power, now it's the only way to power it, and they supply you with a power cable, but you can use any USB power bank to power it, and don't need any extra accessory cable to do so. Bluetooth input, but now it's also an output, so you finally have wireless monitoring via Bluetooth. Remains to be seen with what latency, but this is huge, that you can, for instance, use your AirPods with the RØDECaster Pro natively, which is really convenient if you're participating in video calls where you don't want a bulky headphone hanging off your head. Solo and mute buttons for the channels with the same functionalities, including talkback, mic presets, and now they have added a preset for the Shure SM7B right out of the box, which is really kind from Rode. And by the way, you can also create your own mic presets and record them if you want. The beloved Aphex effects, the big bottom, the oral exciter, then the de-esser, the compressor, so the onboard voice processing capabilities of version 1, but they have added to that the Aphex compeller, which is for mastering and leveling the final show, as well as a basic 3-man EQ and much more granular visual fine-tuning options. Talking about what they have added, there's more. Much more. And this is mind-blowing. First of all, gain. Now they are using Rode's own preamps baptized as Revolution, and they seem to be nothing short of that. They are really quiet, with a gain range of 76 decibel. 76! In my prediction, I was hoping for maybe 59 or 60 decibels, considering that Focusrite took 3 years between 2 Scarlett generations to go from 52 to 56 decibels. But gain itself, 76, would be worth nothing if it wouldn't be clean gain without hissing. Well, with a self noise of minus 131, I think, 131 dB, this is about as clean as it gets. When I first heard that adding a cloud lifter or a fathead to this will actually degrade the audio and introduce noise to it, I thought they are just overstating and trying to be funny, but no, this is actually the case. Besides, why would you want to boost anything beyond 76 dB? And clarity will also apply to the headphone port, which was criticized many times with the original version. Let's call it version 1 from now on. Now they even let you select if you have a high sensitivity earplug or a really low sensitivity studio monitor headphone. And the unit automatically adjusts the gain curve to fit it. They should be clean now. Speaking of headphones, their volume dials are now in a row instead of in a quadrant, which makes it much easier to find which knob dials which headphone, and on top, they are also now color-coded like on the Tascam Mixcast 4 and in the Zoom PodTrack P8. There are now halo rings around the dials, and they also light up like on the Mixcast 4. However, Rode took it further by a mile, as while on the Mixcast 4 these colors are fixed and only on the bottom of the dial, and on the Zoom PodTrack P8 they are actually painted. Wow, saying this makes it really sound like a Stone Age device. Here on the RØDECaster Pro, you can choose whatever color you like them to be and match them up with the mic inputs. Also, and I need to see how it works in the real unit with the final firmware, but theoretically, you can create a different mix for each headphone output. And this is mind-blowing. If this really works, then it can effectively mean that you can create 4 discrete submixes on top of your own mix. That opens up a hell of a lot of possibilities for music recording, for instance, where you may want to add a different mix to the singer and a different mix to your guitarist, but also for podcasting. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because I need to mention another addition before, which is the second USB-C port. With this, you can not only replace the TRRS phone input, but also, should you decide to connect the phone via Bluetooth, which now is a wide-range Bluetooth, so it should capture more of the frequency range of the person talking at the other end of the call. So if you leave both USB-C ports free, you can add 2 computers or tablets simultaneously. This, together with the different mixes for every headphone output, theoretically can allow you to invite, talk to, and record as many as 6 remote guests. 6. Crazy. 1 over Bluetooth using a phone, a second over USB using a laptop, a third again over USB using a tablet or a second computer, and then 4, 5, and 6 using the good old method of connecting other phones with the iRig2 adapter. See my video on the Zoom L8, it should work kind of the similar way. And still there is yourself with a mic input free. And you will also have sound pads. And that's a lot of channels you can record in multitrack and in stereo simultaneously should you want to do so. Oh, and by the way, one of the points on my wish list in the prediction video was to get rid of the polywave files that take a huge amount of space and take the simple, straightforward file management of the Zoom PodTrack series, and they just did that. Now every track is recorded to a separate file, which is way more convenient. And speaking of tracks, while Rode has removed 2 faders, they have also added 1 more channel. And this sounds a little confusing, but bear with me. So in version 1, you had 8 channels, 4 mic inputs, a Bluetooth, a smartphone channel, a USB, and the sound pads. Now you have a 9th channel, 4 mics or instruments, Bluetooth, sound pads, 2 USBs, and a 3rd USB channel that is specifically for voice chats. Need to have a look at it when it will be available. In any case, and this is big, you are not fixed as to which channel records what. You can decide for yourself, and this is why they have removed the numbers from the quick access buttons above the faders, because you may want to assign the 2nd fader to the Bluetooth channel and the 3rd to a USB loopback channel. And Rode must have thought that, well, who are we to tell you which fader you control which channel with? You are the content creator, so you'll decide. And this is amazing. On version 1, many have not been using the 4 mic channels and the TRRS input, yet you always had it fixed in front of you as per the default factory hardware. Not anymore. Here you can do whatever you want. Remember that you could select the color for your headphones. You can now select them for your channels as well, too. Fully flexible. You can also save this configuration as a preset and record it at any time as shows. You don't even need a computer or a specific app to do that, while previously you needed a companion app to do this. All this now can be set on this standalone device. And there's theoretically no limit to add more channels, as this device is a beast. It has a quad-core audio processor built in, so while version 1 pretty much has reached its upgradability limits... Upgradability? Is that a word? It simply cannot accommodate any more processing than what it can do now, so don't hold your breath for new updates on version 1. The RØDECaster Pro II, however, it does not even break a sweat, and the hardware is basically not limited when it comes to future upgrades, be it additional channels, additional voice processing effects, additional software integration, or whatever, which is why I use the Tesla of the audio production world metaphor. Another feature of the Mixcast 4, where Rode needed to catch up, is the audio delay over USB for streamers or video content creators, as the audio signal is quicker than the video, and this can cause the audio and video to be out of sync. Well, Rode did catch up, and now you can dial it in on the RØDECaster Pro II as well, so that the lip sync with the video is perfect. Speaking of dialing in, you now have a Rotary Dial beside the screen, and the screen will be the next we'll talk about, by the way. But this dial is a multifunction dial that can do a number of things depending on what you are doing in a given moment. If you are on the main screen, it adjusts the main output levels. If these are sent out to the Bluetooth headphones, then those. If you are in any setting, like the voice effect setting, that you can use it to fine adjust any setting there. Since you can have as many as 9 channels, but you only have 6 faders on the unit, you can control volumes and gain for the virtual faders with this knob. And a number of other things like panning left and right, which is now possible on all channels. Then mounting options. Now you have a thread and a Visa mount option on the bottom, which makes it easy to mount it on an arm on your desk or in an ergonomic position that you like. Having mentioned ergonomics, let's talk about the screen, which is now tilted in a convenient angle. It also got larger, 5.5 inch to be exact, which is, you probably guessed it, larger than the 5-inch screen on the Tascam Mixcast 4. I couldn't find a reliable dimension scale for the original unit, but that screen was definitely smaller. And it needs to be larger, first because you have more channels to display, although the meters from the main outputs have moved to the top right of the screen, much like in the Rode Connect software. But more importantly, you now have the sound pads displayed on the screen, which is another ingenious invention from the Tascam Mixcast 4, and Rode was clever enough to add it. But again, they went much further, as these sound pads are not just sound pads anymore, but smart pads. Smart pads because they not only trigger sound effects or pre-recorded audio files, they can now do various different things, like adding a voice effect or more to any and every channel, like voice masking, robot, megaphone, but also thrash talk, beep, and pitch shifting. And these effects are also stackable, so you can add more than one effect to any channel and trigger it with a smart pad. They can also do MIDI control should you want to control your DAW or your streaming software through this. And finally, they can trigger automated mixing commands like a global fade out and global fade in of all channels. You also have 8 SmartPad banks, so all in all 64 variations to play with, which you can switch using the much welcomed hardware buttons under them. Also while recording, which was a major criticism of the Tascam Mixcast 4, where you have 72 sound pads in total, but once you hit record, you are stuck with the one bank of 8 pads that you had active at the time you pressed record. Not the case here, which is tremendous. You also have new inputs/outputs that you did not have on version 1, Ethernet and Wi-Fi. Now, while I don't really know what the Ethernet port will be used for, you probably can transfer audio through it though. Wi-Fi is already a very much welcomed addition, as if you have ever tried to update the firmware on a Zoom or a Tascam unit, and you had to mess around with taking out the SD card, copying the file on your computer, putting back the SD card, push buttons at a certain time for a certain period, wash the screen, and generally it was just a mess. That I bet at the end of the day many have just remained on the previous firmware not to fry the hardware. Now it will be a push of a button after receiving the notification on the unit itself. Fantastic! Especially because Rode does have a fairly good track record of releasing regular and frequent firmware updates to their devices, specifically for the RØDECaster Pro. In fact, Rode has pretty openly teased that for the new RØDECaster Pro II, you will see a firmware update every 4 to 6 weeks, which will add features we didn't even know we've needed. One of the future updates will be the ability to use the USB ports to connect Rode's beloved USB microphones like the NT-USB Mini, the VideoMic NTG, the VideoMic Go 2, or the Wireless Go 2, just like with Rode Connect. And if I was to predict some more feature updates, is the tighter integration to the Rode software ecosystem so that you can use Rode Connect integrated with the RØDECaster Pro, which also opens up the gate for Rode Connect Mobile. Also, a quite obvious update will be that the RØDECaster Pro II's virtual USB channels could be assigned to different software on the computer, like the Go XLR or the Beacon or the Elgato do. And theoretically, there shouldn't be any hardware limit on the RØDECaster Pro II's size as to how many such virtual channels you can have based on the power of the unit itself. And despite the pretty much amazing device itself, to which really no other competitor comes close, the most compelling aspect of the RØDECaster Pro II is its future potential. And this is why I've compared it to Tesla. It is an extremely capable and flexible audio device right out of the box when it ships. But you can bet Rode will keep on adding more and more features and capabilities until you'll find yourself realizing that you have a whole other device on your desk that is way more capable than when you've purchased it. The Tesla of the audio world. I can't wait to get my hands on one and make a full review. Looking at you, Rode. Bye for now.